Look at a map of Africa. You will see straight lines cutting through the land. Not rivers, not mountains, just straight lines, like someone used a ruler. Those lines are still there today. People still live on both sides of them. And in many places, those same lines still cause fighting, killing, and division right now, in the present day. By the end of this video, you will understand how a small group of men, sitting in one room in Europe, changed the lives of hundreds of millions of people who came after them. You will also learn why the story most people know about this event is not fully correct. The truth is a bit different, and in some ways, worse. In November 1884, leaders from 14 European countries met in Berlin. The United States sent an observer too. Not one African king, chief, or leader was invited. Not one African person had a seat at that table. The official reason for the meeting was to stop European countries from fighting each other over land in Africa. The real result was much bigger. Over about 100 days, these men made decisions that would shape an entire continent, and the people who actually lived on that continent had no say in any of it. Here is what most people believe happened next. They believe the men in that room sat with a map, a ruler, and a pencil, and drew Africa's borders right there in Berlin. This is the popular story. But it is mostly wrong. The Berlin Conference did not draw the actual borders. It set the rules for how borders would later be claimed. The main rule was called effective occupation. In simple words, it meant, if a European country could prove it controlled a piece of land, that land belonged to them. The real borders were drawn later, slowly, over many years, through hundreds of separate agreements between European countries. Most of these agreements were signed far away from Africa, in European offices, long after the Berlin meeting had ended. There is another twist here. For a long time, people believed the borders were drawn without any thought at all, just random lines on empty space. New research does not fully support that idea. Researchers who studied the actual paths of African borders found that most of them followed something real on the ground. Many borders follow rivers. Many follow lakes. Many follow the old edges of African kingdoms that existed before Europeans arrived. So, the lines were not just careless scribbles, but do not relax yet. Because even when the lines followed a river or an old kingdom's edge, the decision about where exactly to place that line and which side each village or family ended up on was still made by Europeans, for European reasons. African people had no vote in any of it, and the results were still very real and still very damaging. Let's look at the actual numbers. Close to half of all of Africa's borders are straight lines. That is the highest number of straight-line borders of any continent on Earth. Together, these straight lines cut through at least 177 different ethnic groups. That means one people, with one language and one culture, often got split between two or more different countries. Here is a clear example. The Malinka people of West Africa are one ethnic group. Today, they are split across 6 different countries: Senegal, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, and the Gambia. 6 countries, one people. Here is another example. The Somali people in East Africa were split into 5 separate territories. Britain controlled 2 of them. Italy controlled 1. France controlled 1. Ethiopia controlled 1. One group of people, ruled by 4 different foreign powers, split into 5 different pieces. But sometimes the line was not drawn on land at all. Sometimes the line was drawn straight through people. In Rwanda, the groups called Hutu and Tutsi had existed for a long time before Europeans arrived. But back then, these were flexible social groups. A person's group could depend on things like how much cattle they owned, or their job, not their family bloodline. A person could actually move from one group to another during their lifetime. In 1933, Belgian colonial officials changed all of that. They gave every person in Rwanda an identity card. On that card, each person was permanently marked as Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa, What used to be flexible became fixed and legal. You could no longer move between groups. Your card decided who you were for life. 61 years later, in 1994, those same identity cards became a matter of life and death. During the Rwandan genocide, armed men used these cards at checkpoints to decide, in seconds, who lived and who died. Not every colonial decision split people apart. Some decisions forced very different people together instead. In 1914, a British colonial officer named Lord Frederick Lugard joined two separate territories into one single country. One territory was the Northern Protectorate. It was mostly Muslim, and the British ran it through local emirs, using a system called indirect rule. The other territory was the Southern Protectorate. It had many different ethnic groups, many different religions, including Christianity and traditional beliefs, and it was run more directly by British officials. Lugard joined these two very different territories into one country and called it Nigeria. This was not done because the two regions wanted to unite, or because they shared a common identity. Historical records show the real reason was money. The Northern Protectorate had a budget problem. Joining it with the South, which had extra money, solved that budget problem for the British administration. Two regions with different religions, different systems of government, and different histories were joined together mainly to fix an accounting problem. Around the same period, in Central Africa, King Leopold II of Belgium was given personal control over the Congo at that same Berlin meeting. He did not rule it as a normal colony. He ran it almost like his own private business, focused on extracting rubber and ivory. Historians widely agree that forced labor and brutal punishment under his rule caused the deaths of large numbers of Congolese people. This is one of the clearest and most extreme examples of what happened when African land and African lives were treated as property to be managed from Europe. Here is the part that really matters. Research on divided ethnic groups across Africa has found something important. When fighting breaks out in a place where an ethnic group has been split by a colonial border, that fighting tends to last longer, and it tends to kill more people. Some estimates put the difference at around 25% more deaths compared to conflicts where an ethnic group's homeland stayed in one piece. But African people did not simply accept these lines and stop living their normal lives. Today, informal trade across these borders, trade that crosses the exact same lines drawn by Europeans over 100 years ago, is estimated to be worth close to 43% of Africa's entire official economic output. Every single day, people cross borders to trade with family members that a map, drawn without their input, now calls foreigners. So the next time you look at a map of Africa and notice one of these unusually straight lines, remember what it really is. It is not just a line on paper. It is a decision made over 100 years ago by men who never lived in Africa, never met the people they were dividing, and never had to live with the results. That line still shapes real lives today. And maybe the biggest lesson from all of this is not that African borders were drawn carelessly. It is that they were never Africa's decision to make in the first place.